Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 6th annual meeting of Nova Scotia College of Nursing. I am Pratik Ganibrar, Chair of the NSCN Board. It is 1 p.m. and I'll now call the 2025 annual meeting of Nova Scotia College of Nursing to order. I would like to start with our land acknowledgement, which I'll share with you now. The Nova Scotia College of Nursing respectfully acknowledges that they're located on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq. We recognize the Mi'kmaq as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land, where the territory and its 13 First Nations are covered by the treaties of peace and friendship which remain effective today. NSCN acknowledges the historic and ongoing systemic barriers and injustices caused by colonization and the resulting inequitable treatment of Indigenous peoples in healthcare. We recognize colonialism has caused significant barriers to access, participation, representation, and success within the nursing profession. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of NSCN's responsibility and commitment to continuous learning, dismantling ongoing legacies of oppression and inequity, and reconciliation to effect meaningful change in the regulation of nursing profession. We are all treaty people. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today and for making NSCN's annual meeting a priority in your busy schedule. We have had 170 participants registered for today's meeting from across the province, and we have some individuals joining from elsewhere in Canada, which is the benefit of this online meeting. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. And the NSCN annual meeting is our accountability report to the public and all of our stakeholders. It is an opportunity for all of you to see how the nursing profession regulates itself and to demonstrate that NSCN does this while maintaining the public as its top priority. Before we go any further, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to the NSCN board. I know they're pleased to be joining us online today. The board has 11 members, including myself as chair, 5 public representatives, and 6 registrants. The following public representatives board members are joining us online: Alana Baxter, Paulette Anderson, Robin Schliehoff, David Davidson, and JJ McIsaac. We also have the following registrant board members online: Krista Smith, who is also the board vice chair, Ashley Clements, Andrew Heighton, Susan Earle, and Tricia Lane. Also with us today, we have the retiring NSCN CEO and Registrar, Sue Smith. And later in the meeting, we'll introduce our new CEO and Registrar, Doug Bungay. I want to note that this year's annual report covers 2024. That's Sue's last full year as CEO and Registrar. And NSCN's independent auditor from Grant Thornton, Chris Treneman, who is also joining us. And you will also meet Caroline Wolf-Stewart, who is the Senior Director for Strategy and Operations a little further on in the agenda. Caroline will be moderating our discussion period later in the meeting. Our second agenda item, is a review of the format of annual meeting and a few words about how everybody can participate. We anticipate that this meeting will end by 2 p.m. this afternoon, and we have IT staff standing by to provide support for technical issues. If you can hear me or see me, I know that you've been able to sign on to the meeting. But please use the chat function if you have any technical difficulties. Turning to the material of today's annual meeting, everyone should have received an email with the link to the information required for this afternoon's meeting, including the annual meeting agenda, minutes from the 2024 NSCN annual meeting, the 2024 NSCN annual report, the NSCN bylaws, and a resource titled NSCN 2025 annual meeting participation. I would like to bring your attention to item number 6 on the agenda titled Discussion Period. This is the opportunity for Sue and I to answer questions about NSCN and our annual report. You were invited to submit your questions in advance when you registered for the meeting, but you can still submit a question or comment during the meeting today as well. Again, the question should focus on the annual report or nursing regulation. While we address your question during the discussion period, please submit your question at any point during the meeting using the chat function, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. We will address as many questions as possible during the time allotted, And if we're unable to get to your questions because of the timing or because your question requires more consideration for a thorough response, we will respond to all questions in writing and will share the information on NSCN website and an upcoming newsletter. Now let's move on to agenda item number 3, that is the NSCN 2024 annual meeting minutes. A link to the minutes from 2024 NSCN annual meeting were posted on the website in February and sent to you in advance of this meeting as well. The board approved these minutes on September 26, 2024, and they're submitted today for your information. We're now at the 4th item in our agenda, the NSCN 2024 annual report. And I'll now invite Sue to join me in presenting our chair and CEO report.
Thank you, Gummy. 2024 was a year of continued regulatory innovation that resulted in meaningful transformation of NSCN as we strengthened our regulatory approach to meet the needs of the public, the driving force behind what we do. NSCN embraced the challenge of a very complex and evolving healthcare system with commitment and focus. Our board and staff recognize our responsibility to ensure our work remains relevant, inclusive, fit for purpose, and future focused. We consistently challenged ourselves to rethink our approach to nursing regulation, ensuring our decisions are guided by prioritizing public safety while enabling qualified nurses to deliver safe, competent, ethical, and compassionate care to all Nova Scotians. The 2024 annual report, of which I have a copy here, and I hope you do, it's also online, but let's have some highlights. We focused in the 2024 annual report on how we delivered on our 3 strategic objectives: effective, transparent, and accountable regulation. In the report, you will see an example of how NSCN delivered on the strategic goal, effective regulation. Our first highlight is the development of the new regulatory guiding principles to shape the future of our regulatory work. NSCN operates as a right-touch regulator. This means we regulate by applying the minimal amount of what's called regulatory force to achieve the desired outcome. Right-touch regulation proactively guides and evaluates our processes, services, and regulatory approaches. As part of the process to develop these principles, NSCN conducted consultations with our stakeholders who provided feedback on the draft principles. Actually, we had over 550 responses, and it was overwhelmingly positive feedback. 87% of those 550 respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the draft principles were appropriate in guiding our regulatory work. The final principles provide detailed guidance on NSCN's risk tolerance, decision-making lens, problem-solving approach, and areas of focus for regulatory intervention. The principles also support us in making consistent, innovative, and principled choices to meet the complex and ever-changing needs of our healthcare system and the needs of our communities. We continue to prioritize the integration of these principles into all areas of our current and future work, and will be more widely releasing the guiding principles to the public this summer. Our next example features some of NSCN's ongoing collaboration at the national table with the Canadian Council of Registered Nurse Regulators, CCRNR, on the Nurse Practitioner, and here's a mouthful, Regulatory Framework Implementation Plan Just know that it is absolutely wonderful work that's been done collaboratively for the NPs. The work illustrates how we evaluate and refine our processes, adopting a national approach to create a consistent regulatory framework for NPs across Canada. As part of this initiative, NSCN contributed to the advisory committee that laid the groundwork for the nurse practitioner practice analysis. In March, a national NP validation study was distributed to all nurse practitioners in Nova Scotia to validate the draft practice statements used for the draft NP exam. The NP practice analysis was completed as the first step in developing a new entry-level national NP exam. LPNs and RNs have had a standard entry to practice exam nationally, but NPs have not. And so this has been a major, major accomplishment that will benefit all patients across Canada. In addition to this work, in late 2024, NSCN prepared the schools of nursing and nurse practitioners for the launch of the new entry-level competencies for nurse practitioners, which took effect January 2nd, 2025. Our next example will be around effective regulation and coordination. Through 2024, NSCN worked towards the implementation of Nurses Canada. And in this case, nurses is spelled NURSYS, and it's basically a core IT program. Nurses is a Canadian national nurse database that does and will enhance public safety by providing Canadian regulatory bodies access to real-time registered information for nurses who have practiced in Canada and the United States. Health Canada also really supports this nurses' work as a national priority, and particularly for the overall safety of the public. They also recognize it will have value as understanding the national workforce better. The national work has been supported by a Health Canada $2.5 million investment over the last 3 years. Each nurse will have a unique identifying number to enable the identification of that same nurse in all jurisdictions in which they have been licensed. This will be a more efficient registration and licensing process. It will enable secure data across all jurisdictions. And we are particularly excited because we are we're one of 2 early adopters of the nurses system, and we'll be going live in the next month or 2. Another example of coordination is the privacy readiness assessment we conducted to identify areas of enhancement to evolve our privacy practices and to assist with NSCN's privacy management program. And we know privacy is an area that all of our stakeholders, particularly the public, are very much interested in. NSCN is accountable for all personal information under our control, including information gathered throughout our regulatory processes. This work enables NSCN to strengthen and modernize our privacy management in order to better manage privacy-related risks. It also supports NSCN in meeting the expectation of the public and registrants in the protection of their personal information. A second example of how we evaluate the focus and effective regulation is our work to collect data annually in compliance with the data sets by the Canadian Institute for Health Information. Actually, guys, I got ahead of myself there. I was so excited. I'll get to that in about 4 minutes. I just want to finish off privacy assessment. The privacy assessment readiness was an organization-wide in scope and better enabled NSCN to implement privacy considerations in our systems, practices, and policies. The report also includes the example of how we evaluate, particularly in how we built and have expanded our analytic capacity to inform strategic decision-making and support ongoing evaluation of our processes, services, and approaches. Our first example highlights our planned series of formal evaluations of NSCN's direct international registration and licensure, DURL. This evaluation work, as planned, started when we began in 2023, and its aim has always been to strengthen and identify areas of improvement, and this continued in 2024. In 2024, there were 2 planned evaluation reports of DURL, which presented findings from nurses who were licensed between November 2023 and October 2024. In 2024, we had 2,008 international nurses licensed for the first time under our expedited registration and licensure process. Since the launch of this process in May 2023, we've approved more than 4,700 nurses for registration and licensure through DURL. The feedback we've received in these evaluation surveys, which are available online, folks, have been instrumental in supporting evidence-informed decisions and ensure accountability for those decisions. Now, as promised, back to another example of evaluating. Our focus in effective regulation has been around the collection of a new defined set of information that is standard across Canada through the Canadian Institutes for Health Information, CIHI. In 2024, we created the capacity to collect nursing data aligned with this new minimum data collection set for CIHI. The work included customizing our registrant portal, revising our registration forms, and consulting with our Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, EDIB, committee on questions related to these topics. This work ensures that NSCN submits accurate data to accelerate improvements in healthcare, health system performance, and population health across Canada. The data also supports national health human resource planning, which aligns with our mandate of public protection. On page 12 of the annual report, we feature highlights of how NSCN has demonstrated its objective of transparent regulation through our customer service focus. At NSCN, our vision for regulatory excellence includes delivering a positive customer experience for all stakeholders. In 2024, we took significant steps to support this vision by developing an organization-wide customer experience strategy. The strategy provided the opportunity to outline our approach to create the best possible customer experience in each and every interaction. And the overarching goal is fostering customer experience excellence in the day-to-day of NSCN. We also prioritize staff development by offering various training courses in professionalism in the workplace and email etiquette. To further ensure consistency in our communications across NSCN, we developed customer service email expectations resources. This provided guidance is there to help staff create thoughtful, professional, and clear emails to ensure we are respectful and continue to deliver on our mandate of public protection. A second example of our customer service focus in transparent regulation was our work to lay the foundation for a new professional practice module in the NSCN Registrant Portal, which streamlines our Continuing Competence Program Process, CCP. The NSCN CCP is a regulatory program and quality assurance mechanism for all nurses in Nova Scotia. It is a requirement that every nurse has to successfully complete the CCP expectations for initial licensure or as part of their annual license renewal. We are pleased that the new module streamlines the process, enabling nurses to fulfill their requirements directly through the portal, offering a more seamless and efficient user experience. Nurses can develop their professional growth plan directly within the portal and, if selected for an audit, submit their plan as required. The new module was successfully launched in early 2025. NSCN's annual report also features highlights of how NSCN engaged and informed stakeholders as a transparent regulator. One example of transparent regulation was through NSCN's equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. Our EDI vision is to continue to shape an ongoing respectful and supportive regulator that creates programs and services that meet the diverse needs of all that we serve. In the spring, we published our first ever registrant demographic and baseline survey report, which shared the results of the Building Culturally Responsive Care for Nova Scotians survey, the first of not only in Canada, I think North America, and thank you all for responding. The report provided valuable insights, including demographic data, cultural responsiveness findings, learning and engagement summaries, and qualitative reflections from nurses. There were pages and pages of comments. And again, just please visit our website for more information or contact us. I'm also pleased to share that we also hired a dedicated EDIB consultant in the fall, and it's been essential in us leading and implementing more of our EDIB initiatives. We also hosted 2 off-site dedicated EDIB sessions as part of our ongoing EDIB learning. Last year, NFCN engaged registrants and employers through 2 successful workshops, one held in Dartmouth and one in Sydney, called Supporting Professional Practice in Nursing Workshop. These workshops were developed in response to analysis of our practice consultations and a needs assessment survey of NSCN registrants, which was conducted in 2023. These workshops are targeted towards managers, clinical nurse educators, professional practice leads, and others in leadership roles. The workshops aim to support the ability of these nurses in leading nurses in practice. The sessions covered a range of topics, including everyday leadership, transition to practice, optimization of scope, and the sexual misconduct standard of practice. We conducted post-workshop evaluations with largely positive reviews from those who attended. We will be holding more workshops throughout the province in 2025, with the next one being June 5th in Yarmouth. Please stay tuned to our website and newsletters for more information.
The report also includes examples of how NSCN delivers accountable regulation by ensuring rationale for decisions are communicated clearly to the public, registrants, and other stakeholders. One example of accountable regulation is NSCN's ongoing work towards the migration of the Regulated Health Professions Act, or RHPA, in June 2026, and the amalgamation of the Midwifery Regulatory Council of Nova Scotia and NSCN. In November 2023, the Nova Scotia government passed the RHPA, introducing new legislation of regulated health professions in Nova Scotia. The new legislation will replace the 22 unique profession-specific acts with one consistent and modern act that the regulated health professions will migrate to over a scheduled and phased-in approach. In 2024, NSCN began the preliminary work necessary to lay the foundation for integration of the two colleges and migration to RHPA, including joint meetings between the leadership of both colleges to enhance collaboration and strategy alignment, establishing a steering committee to lead the operational and governance work, identifying the resource and supports required, including legal services, approval processes, and reporting and due diligence assessments, agreeing to an approach of ensuring minimal disruption of service to the public and registrants during this transition. To further align the 22 regulated health professions in Nova Scotia with the RHPA, the Nova Scotia Regulated Health Professions Network, or called the Network, made up of the health regulators, including NSCN, has played an important role in developing a consistent approach to build the basis for a common legislative foundation, including a new common policies and standards. We look forward to continuing to play a pivotal role in this work and for NSCN to further grow and develop a new multi-professional regulator in Nova Scotia.
In 2024, NSCN began the work to explore a new regulatory framework for registered psychiatric nurses, RPNs, who have largely practiced in the West. RPN registration and licensure in Nova Scotia are forthcoming. RPNs are a separate and distinct nursing designation within the profession of nursing. This regulatory framework would authorize RPNs to practice in our province, enabling these new healthcare providers to positively support the healthcare needs of Nova Scotians. The regulatory framework under exploration does not include the development and approval of an RPN education program in Nova Scotia, certainly not at this period in time. NSCN is working with health system partners on plans that involve the integration of RPNs into our healthcare system, and in anticipation of registering and licensing the first registered psychiatric nurses before the end of 2025. This brings us to the end of highlights that you will find in NSCN's 2024 annual report. I encourage you to please read the report online or print it out like I do for more information if you've not yet had a chance to. 2024 was certainly a big year for NSCN and for nursing regulation, not only in Nova Scotia, but across the country. The NSCN board and staff look forward to the challenges and opportunities ahead and continue to prioritize the public of Nova Scotia.
Thank you, Sue. Last year was truly a transformative year for NSCN, and I'm confident that the work already underway will continue to drive innovation into 2025 and beyond. There's a great deal of work coming our way that includes introduction of the registered psychiatric nurses that is anticipated by the end of 2025, the amalgamation with Midwifery Regulatory Council of Nova Scotia taking place by next summer, implementation of Nurses Canada, which is a national nurse database that allows real-time exchange of information about a nurse's licensing history across the country, and of course, continuing our regulatory support for Nova Scotians and the health system. I am confident that NSCN is well equipped to meet the future challenges, and the team remains dedicated to advancing nursing regulation in Nova Scotia. Now on to item number 5 on the agenda, the NSCN 2024 Auditor's Report. The Auditor's Report is included in the annual report pre-circulated and available on NSCN's website. I will now ask Mr. Chris Treneman from Grant Thornton to present the 2024 Auditor's Report for NSCN. We will have an opportunity to address any questions you may have about the report during the discussion period that follows this presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here virtually with you all today to walk through the results of the 2024 financial statement audit. As introduced, my name is Chris Treneman, and I would oversee the Nova Scotia College of Nursing financial statement audit each year. Looking to the audit for the current year, Doane Grant Thornton did have a meeting with the NSCN board on April 24th, 2025, at which time we reviewed the draft financial statements and talked through any matters that arose as a result of the financial statement audit. All these matters were communicated to the board, and I'm pleased to report that there were no unusual or concerning items such as fraud, significant control deficiencies, which is always a great news and a good result. After presentation of the financial statements, the board did approve the statements at that meeting, which sets the audit report date for the current year, April 24th, 2025. I am pleased to report that we issued an unmodified or a clean audit opinion under the accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. If we look at the detail of the financial statements, though, I will draw your attention to a couple highlights for the year. Turning first to the statement of operations, this statement outlines the revenues and expenditures of the entity over the course of the year. A few highlights here. You can see that from a revenue perspective, revenues have increased year over year. Looking to the first line, licensing and other related fees, there's an increase this year due to increased total registrants during the 2024 year. Investment income has also increased this year, really as a result of strong markets and positive interest rates during the 2024 year. The other large change in the revenue streams for the current year would relate to government contributions. Government contributions are up significantly year over year, and that's really largely driven by the direct international registration licensure funding that has been provided. Looking to the expense side, we see that expenses for NSCN have also increased year over year, and really that correlates well to the additional work required with the continued increased volume, really driven by the direct international registration licensure and other licensings. If we look at the next page, it's the statement of financial position. So this provides an overview of the assets and liabilities of the entity at a point in time, in this case, December 31st, 2024, with comparatives to the 2023 year. If we look to the assets first, a couple of the larger changes, we see that investments have increased year over year, and this is a result of additional investments being made as surplus cash was invested during the course of the year. From an accounts receivable perspective, we can see a decrease from 711 down to 447, and this is largely driven by a large balance outstanding last year from the Nova Scotia Regulated Health Professions Network that was collected in the 2024 year. There's also a change in prepaids during the course of the year, and this is really driven mostly by increased professional liability insurance costs as the active licenses have increased during the 2024 year as well. Looking to liabilities, the largest change there relates to the deferred revenue, which again is driven by the increased number of licenses during the year. The next page highlights the statement of changes in net assets, showing the overall flow of the fund balances of NSCN year over year. There is an annual adjustment each year to the liquidity reserve, so we can see that being a transfer from the unrestricted reserve in accordance with the board policy. We also see increases to the unrestricted fund, and that's really driven by the results of operations for the year. At the end of the day, the ending net balance in combination of all the funds is in a solid position, and the organization is quite healthy. The next page, and the last core page of the financial statements, would be the statement of cash flows. So this outlines the overall flow of cash year over year, explaining the change from the statement of financial position. And we can see that there has been about a $26,000 change in overall cash balances. And that's really driven by the excess of revenues over expenditures for the current year, offset by the additional investments made during the course of the year. And then finally, the rest of the financial statements that are included in the annual report consist of the notes, providing an overall additional information relating to the policies and detail of the financial statements. A couple items that I'll note: the allocation of administrative expenses is made each year and disclosed in the financial statements, and it's a reallocation to the Registrant Legislative and Administration Services. But overall, the notes are very consistent year over year. There have been no changes to the accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations that have had any sort of material impact to the financial statements. So the notes are consistent year over year. So overall, a great result from a financial statement perspective. So pleased to have had the opportunity to provide those high-level overview comments to you at today's meeting, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Trenman. We appreciate you joining us today and walking us through that information. We're now on to agenda item number 6, which is our scheduled discussion period. And I would like to remind you to please submit any questions you would like to be considered via the chat function. Following the annual meeting, a Q&A document, including responses to the questions, will be shared with all of you. This includes questions we may not get to based on timing restraints. At this time, I would like to introduce Caroline Wolf-Stewart, who is the Senior Director of Strategy and Operations, who will act as a moderator for this portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Gunny, and thank you everybody that has submitted questions. We have several that I will be going through. The first question I have that we've received is an operational question, and I will direct this one to Sue. And the question is, NSCN paused the expedited process for international nurses at the beginning of this year. Why? Does this mean there was an issue with your process? And if so, what are your future plans?
Thank you, Caroline. In anticipation of some questions we might get, Gunny and I had the opportunity to write down some notes. So if you don't mind, I'll also look at my notes about this. But I'm really glad to get this question. And first and foremost, there's absolutely no issue at all with our direct international registration and licensure DIRL program. We had said from the start that we would do 6-month evaluations, which are on our website, and that we would evaluate the process. And if there was an opportunity to have some enhancements, we would also do those. So definitely the other thing is, although we're paused, I want to remind folks there are still, through the traditional method, any international nurse can still apply through our National Nursing Assessment Service, NNAS. So in looking at the fact that I'm chuckling because the first week we started in 2023 in the spring, we thought we might get, 1,500 maybe or so. And I think we were at 7,000 or 8,000 the first week alone. So we quickly convened a meeting with our Minister of Health, the CEO of the Health Authority, deputy ministers. An IEN action team was assembled with the Office of Professional Healthcare Recruitment and Immigration, and many members, including ourselves, to look at the overall what can be done to how best to support any nurses coming in through the direct international licensing and registration. So to date, we have received over 30,000 inquiries. And in the fall of 2024, it became clear that we would not get all the applications processed before the staff that we had temporary funding for. The government provided us just over $2 million for a 2.5-year process we basically doubled our staff in licensing and registration. And we knew that we still had 3,300 active and 7,000 other applications that were waiting to be reviewed. So we took the opportunity to have a temporary pause for a number of reasons. First, to process the applications that we had received to that point, and the team had already really broken many records in processing and expediting licensure. And also, it was time for our next evaluation. So the other part of this pause is looking at, as when the pause come off, because the pause will come off as was planned as well, how best can we have an HR strategy as well to process folks going forward. In our evaluation findings thus far, we first always have and will continue to process international nurses living in Nova Scotia first. Then those international nurses living in Canada next. And then we follow with those living abroad. And in this case, the 7 countries that we identified. Again, I want to remind folks that any nurse across the world can still apply to work in Nova Scotia in Canada through the National Nursing Assessment Service, NNAS. So the one thing that our evaluation, and this is all going to be on the website, this current evaluation that's not quite finished, but almost, but we definitely showed, it showed a marked decrease in those applying with a Nova Scotia address, and a marked decrease in those that even had a Canadian address, as more nurses living outside Canada were applying. Again, that's not a bad thing. It's just, again, the facts of the matter. We also saw a rise in the number of registrants that were asking for information on something called a verification of registration, or VORs. And that's usually a sign of, once you become registered and licensed with us, you might be looking to go practice somewhere else in Canada. And that was something we were aware of from the very beginning when we launched Dural, is we didn't want to become a pathway to other provinces in Canada. We really wanted to work hard with all of our system partners to stay in Nova Scotia. So we also know along that lines that the regulator is only one piece of the fitting together of how best can we not only register and license, which we do as a regulator, but immigration is huge in all of this, as well as having a job, and employment is huge, and transitioning to not only practice, but to settle in communities as well. So the IEN Action Team, Internationally Educated Nurse Action Team of the health system partners, as previously mentioned, the employers, Department of Health and Wellness, the Office of Health Professional Recruitment, Immigration, are really continuing to work on the integration of IENs into the system. And we will be validating the findings of our evaluations with this group as well.
And the team will be completing the last survey and looking at 2 years of evidence that will inform the type of enhancements that can be made to this process. We recognize the role NSCN plays in terms of supplying the health system with qualified nurses, and that remains of importance to the board and all levels of this organization. We look forward to sharing more information with you over the summer.
Thank you, Sue and Gunny. The next question that we have is again another operational question. So Sue, I'll again direct this question to you. And the question is, NSCN is reporting a significant surplus for 2024. Why did this happen? Can you give some explanation?
Well, again, anticipating we might have a question around this because quite frankly, this was a very unusual year, this past year, 2024. We had the highest number of registrants ever, so therefore there was increased revenue. But we also had one-time funding, as mentioned, from the government. And you'll find the surplus that we had almost matches exactly with what the government provided as the one-time funding. So it's an in and out. And our auditor, Chris, mentioned some of these factors, and it's also in our audit. It shows up very clearly in there. But also in this very atypical, not your typical year, in addition to the one-time funding of the government and the increase in licensure, we actually had a profit on our investments because like most everyone, you have the ups and downs, and we always are very cautious, low risk investments. But there was actually a return on those investments that also contributed to the surplus. That surplus is now, as Chris would have gone through, in our investment account.
Okay, thank you so much, Sue. Just looking another question, and again, Sue, this one I'm going to turn to you again. There's a lot of coverage about nurses wanting to leave the US right now. We're seeing that in the media, wanting to come to work in Canada. Is now the time to be pausing this registration process? Don't we need to be welcoming American nurses who want to work here? Can I send that to you?
Great question. And I'm so glad that that got asked because we know it's very top of mind with what's going on. And here's the short answer. We've not paused that at all. In fact, we've worked directly with Nova Scotia Health Authority in supporting their US recruitment campaigns. And actually, in some areas, you don't even need a recruitment campaign because they're coming forward. So we are doing the expedited licensure of any US nurse who has a job or a promise of a job with any Nova Scotia employer. We're expediting their licensure. And we've also received, I guess I was looking for the numbers. I had asked for them just beforehand, and we approved 51 applicants from the US between September 2024 and January 2025. So just even in that short time period, with all of the things that were going on in the US, we've already approved 51 applicants that came in directly and were fast-tracked and had jobs within Nova Scotia.
And I would like to add to what Sue, has already said about NSCN's commitment to evaluating the expedited process and about registering and licensing American nurses in Nova Scotia. I'm proud of the work NSCN has done to review its registration and licensure process and to streamline this approach. This has resulted in adding more qualified nurses to the healthcare system in our province, which is good for all Nova Scotians. And I want to take this opportunity to reiterate that NSCN is not a barrier to those who want to practice in Nova Scotia. There is a pathway for all nurses who want to be here, including an expedited pathway for nurses currently working in the US. And I look forward to the enhancements to the process when the ongoing evaluation is complete.
Thank you, Gunny and Sue. This next question is now a governance question. So I'll turn this one to you, Gunny. And the question is, given the surplus for 2024, will the board consider reducing licensing fees?
And I can totally understand why this question would be asked, and so thank you for this question, Caroline. Let me start by saying that NSCN has never increased its licensing fee.
Never.
And as Sue mentioned, 2024 was a very atypical financial year, and it is important to point that NSCN continues to operate in a changing healthcare environment. And the surplus from operations will not continue at the 2024 level. We anticipate that the applications from nurses from other Canadian provinces are expected to slow down in 2025, which will result in reduced revenues. And the provincial funding received in 2024, it was a one-time funding, so not a factor in 2025. And we need to be very mindful that the future continues to be uncertain and with rising costs. The decision to reduce licensing fee requires a long-term view, and we feel it will be short-sighted to reduce the fee now, given the uncertainty of today's climate. And we wouldn't want to be put in a position where we're decreasing the fee only to incur rising and unforeseen costs, and then have to increase the fee again. So we will, of course, continue to monitor and assess the situation as part of our ongoing work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Gunny. I'm carefully watching the clock, but I think we have time for just one more question. And I will direct this question to Sue as an operational question. And the question is, I read about the Right Touch regulation guiding principles in your annual report, and Sue, you just talked about that. The question is, I provided feedback when you consulted on the principles. Where can I find more information about them and the impact you expect them to have?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for being, whoever submitted the question, for being one of the 550 folks that provided the feedback. So thank you very much. And just a quick highlight again of Right Touch regulation. We developed this concept with the founder, the grandfather of Right Touch regulation, Sir Harry Caton, who was the CEO of the Gold Standard and Regulation, the Public Standards Authority, PSA, in the UK. And after Sir Harry retired, he has become a consultant. And we were most fortunate to work with Harry and another one of his colleagues. We had him come. They came and did a workshop with us last year and looking at how we apply the principles of Right Touch regulation. And we are really, oh my gosh, you could just sit next to Sir Harry and just soak up all the information. But what was really cool is that Sir Harry has also adapted to modern times and changing healthcare. And we're really proud of the fact that this consultation, that we're at a place now where we can look at more specifically around the draft guiding principles. And so these guiding principles will enable NSCN to make decisions about the efficient use of our resources while still focusing on public safety, clearly communicating consistent rationale for new policies and processes, and foster innovation in the interest of the public. So our staff has been using them in this past year, not only in the more traditional areas that you would think in decision-making, but applying it to registration and licensure and also our conduct processes. And it will be an overarching strategy in 2025. So thanks again, and website, contact us, but we will be keeping you up to date as we continue to evolve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. I'll now pass things back over to Gunny to resume the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. So I would like to thank everybody for submitting their questions. In order to be, respectful of time and keeping the meeting on schedule, I am going to have to end the discussion period at this time. I apologize that we could not get to all your questions in time allotted. And as a reminder, NSCN staff will be creating a Q&A document with all your questions and answers to them. So please watch for a response to your questions there. That brings us to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the introduction of the new NSCN board members. So I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the NSCN board for their work as a governing body and to thank each board member for their dedication. While much of the board's work takes place behind the scene, I see your commitment and your hard work, and I thank you for that. I'd especially like to acknowledge 2 board members who will be leaving the board when their term ends at the end of this month. Krista Smith, our board vice chair, and Ashley Clements. Thank you for your contribution to the board table. and it has been my pleasure to work aside both of you, and indeed all members of the NSCN board.
Thank you, Gunny. This is also a fitting time to acknowledge that Gunny will also be leaving the board when his term ends at the end of the month, which I think is just like 2 weeks away. I want to extend my sincerest appreciation for your leadership and commitment and for the difference you have made, not only at and for NSCN, but most importantly, for the lives of Nova Scotians. Thank you, Gunny, and it's been such a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Sue. It's been a pleasure serving on the board of NSCN, and with the outgoing board members, it means that there are upcoming changes to the board, and with some new faces and some familiar faces moving into new roles. So as of June 1st, I am pleased to share that Alana Baxter will be becoming the new NSCN board chair, and David Davidson will become the new board vice chair. Additionally, joining the board on June 1st are our newest board members who were appointed to the board by acclamation in late April. I would like to introduce Carol Ann Miller, who is an LPN, Keely Anderson, who's an LPN, and Opeyemi Adey, who's an RN, as registrant members of NSCN board. So I welcome all of you to the NSCN board on behalf of my board colleagues. Well, that brings us to the end of the agenda, Sue. Before we conclude the meeting, I want to take a moment to recognize the NSCN's retiring CEO and registrar, Sue Smith. Sue was planning on officially retiring last year. However, she had agreed to stay until we recruited her successor to fill the role. On behalf of the board, I do want to thank Sue for the leadership as CEO and registrar for the past 10 years for both the NSCN and the legacy colleges. I know the passion that you have for nursing profession and nursing regulation, and I'm very grateful for your commitment and the difference that you've made in Nova Scotia. And I wish you all the best and a happy and healthy retirement, Sue.
Thank you, Gunny. I really appreciate that. The role of CEO and registrar has been the pinnacle of my nursing career, which began in 1981. From our incredible staff and board to the public, registrants, national colleagues, and our many, many, many stakeholders, you have made this journey unforgettable in a good way. It has been an absolute privilege and honor to work alongside each and every one of you. I'd like to thank Gunny as board chair. We've had many bonding experiences along the way, and for the board for their support. I'd especially like to thank the NSCN staff members, and the work we've accomplished in 2024 would not have been possible without you and the difference you make every day. And it's that difference on behalf of those we serve, the public of Nova Scotia. You are why NSCN exists, and you are the driving force behind not only NSCN, but the governance work that the board does as well. And lastly, I'd like to thank the nurses NSCN regulates across the province for the continued work that you do every day, and that makes such a positive difference for the lives of Nova Scotians. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. So with Sue's departure, I also want to introduce the new incoming CEO and registrar, Doug Bungay. Doug's leadership journey with regulation began when he joined the College of Licensed Practical Nurses of Nova Scotia as Director of Professional Practice and Policy. Upon the creation of NSCN, Doug was appointed as Director of Standards and Guidance and Customer Service and became the Senior Director of Legislative Services and Deputy Registrar in 2019. Throughout his career, Doug has practiced as frontline nurse, both as a licensed practical nurse and as a registered nurse, a practice leader in administration, and then in nursing regulation, bringing a keen understanding of the health system in Nova Scotia and across the country. He brings a wealth of experience and demonstrated commitment to nursing regulation. His leadership and credibility with key partners in the province and across the country makes Doug a perfect fit of what NSCN needs right now to guide NSCN into the future. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Doug to say a few words.
Thank you, Gunny, for those kind words. And it's hard to follow you and Sue, but I'm going to give it a bit of a try. I'm very grateful and humbled to be given the opportunity to lead this organization into the future. I've been a nurse since the late 1900s, which is, nearly 40 years, which is kind of amazing given that I'm only 45. So I've been at this game for a while, and I'm pleased to continue to pursue my passion with this profession in this new role of CEO and registrar. In addition to that, I'm also eager to continue collaborating with my committed colleagues, partners, locally, provincially, nationally, and internationally as we evolve the guidance and approach to nursing regulation in a way that best serves the public interest. Finally, I want to say my many thanks to both Gunny and Sue for your dedication to nursing regulation in Nova Scotia. I wish you both all the best in whatever comes next for both of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
And with that, I'd like to thank those who were able to join us today. And on behalf of the board, thank you for your time, effort, and contributions to regulating the nursing profession in the public's interest. Before we adjourn, I would also like to thank all the staff that was involved in organizing and working behind the scenes for this AGM. Me and Sue both see the endless amount of hours you put in to make these meetings possible. I now declare the 2025 annual meeting of Nova Scotia College of Nursing adjourned. Thank you very much.